into revenge. For the thousands of women who had taken German lovers, retribution was at hand.
Collaborationists are paid off in full measure for consorting with the enemy. Public humiliation is, in reality, mild punishment for traitors.
Collaborators had a hard time all over Europe, but in Norway, the hatred extended to their children.
The whole Norway hated the Germans so much that it was almost too much to ask of them to accept somebody like me. Child of the enemy, child of the hated.
In this unforgiving atmosphere, Frida's mother struggled to bring up her baby daughter. Even though Frida was born a few months after the end of the war, there was no escaping the anger of their neighbours. Everybody in Balingen knew that Frida's father was a German soldier.
There was a lot of animosity towards her, towards Cindy, for having the child. People would be unpleasant, spit in the streets.
Cindy's mother felt that this is not a good place for my granddaughter, which was Frida obviously, to grow up. So she decided that, you know, we're going to Sweden because that's a safe environment, we can start a new life and no one knows who we are.
Moving to Sweden saved Frida from being punished for her mother's actions. But for the 2-year-old, the heartache was just beginning.
And soon after they'd arrived there, Frida's mother, Cindy, she came after. And she actually got a job there and things were sort of looking up. But then something happened. One day she just collapsed at home. And she was rushed to the hospital, and it turned out that there was some problem with her kidneys, and there was surgery and all that, but it turned out that her life couldn't be saved.
Cindy's childhood friend, Sara Mura, remembers how devastated the family were at her death.
It was awful. And I thought of Annie-Frid, that she should lose her mother. She was only a little girl when her mother died. She didn't understand anything about what was happening. And I think that was what we thought about most, that little Annie-Frid had lost her mother.
At the age of 2, Frida was motherless. Her father had disappeared, and her own community had rejected her as a child of the enemy. But she was at least safe once she got to Sweden. Frida's grandmother, Arnetine Lingstad, was determined that her granddaughter's life would not be destroyed. In Sweden, nobody knew that Frida's father was a German soldier, or that she had been part of the Nazis' sinister breeding program. Anonymity was her savior, but Frida's childhood was far from happy. Now an orphan, Frida was all alone.
She used to talk to her friends about that, about her mother, who she didn't know very well, but when the subject would come up, she'd have a very misty look in her eye and seeking to remember the mother that she hardly could recall.
Her grandmother was, you know, she was just so busy with trying to make things work and making a new life for herself in this new country. So she didn't really have the energy to be affectionate towards her granddaughter.
Her background would have made her a quieter child. Obviously, with an upbringing and sadness she had in her lives, I imagine it would affect anybody that way.
They ended up in Torshälla, a small town an hour's drive from Stockholm.
Frida, she was a very lonely child, and she would spend a lot of time alone in her room, reading books and that kind of thing. But I think what saved her really was music. She was very much appreciated in school for her good singing voice as well, and started singing in the local choir and all that. So I think she discovered pretty early that I want to be a singer, and that's what I'm going to do when I grow up.
The famous Miss Doris Day has gladly consented to sing a few songs for us tonight.
Que sera, sera.
The Doris Day hit from Hitchcock's film was a huge hit in Sweden and became one of Frida's favourite songs. At 13, she convinced a local band leader to let her sing with them. Frida's music career had started. By the time she was 16, Frida was singing with a local big band. She'd moved from the simple tune of Que Sera Sera to the more complex jazz of Sweet Georgia Brown. At last, she felt as though she belonged.
It turned her life around in a way, because she'd always enjoyed music and loved music, but now she found that music was actually it became her whole life, and the band became her family more than her grandmother.
She soon fell in love with the band's trombonist. At just 17, she had her first child, a son, Hans. A daughter, Lisa Lotte, soon followed.